1929 when the stock market crashes on Black Tuesday. We'll deal with that history as well. Okay, now we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and also on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Hope everybody's doing well. 5 days before the November 3rd election, and the campaign trail continues to heat up. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when we control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events, politics, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Be sure to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, October 30th, 2020. I should be a panelist once again on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm on every Friday now. So we share the broadcast on our fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. And then there's also Roland broadcast on this Facebook page, Roland Martin on Facebook, and Roland Martin on YouTube. All right. So let's jump into this here. Let's give an update what's going on the campaign trail before we go to break. So Donald Trump and Joe Biden each held events today in Florida, a crucial battleground state with just 5 days left until Tuesday's November 3rd election. Both campaigns are rolling through Tampa, Florida, though not at the same time. Donald Trump held a rally there this afternoon, and Joe Biden has a drive-in event, there this evening. Now, there was a little problem at the event with the Donald Trump had. First, one event a couple of days ago, we left people stranded freezing. And then at this event, heat at Trump rally sends a dozen attendees to the hospital. Heat at Trump rally sends a dozen attendees to the hospital. Officials at the Trump rally in Tampa, Florida said a total of 17 people needed medical attention. And they weren't really practicing social distancing as well. Another super spreader event. A crowded Trump rally in steamy Tampa, Florida on Thursday resulted in 17 attendees needing medical attention, with a dozen being taken to the hospital. Fire officials told NBC News. Trump spoke for just under an hour in 87-degree heat at the event outside of Raymond James Stadium to a largely maskless group of supporters. Dumbasses. I mean, it's a super spreader event and you're out there in the heat. Okay, all right, you that stupid? Okay. A fire truck at the rear of the rally sprayed water in the air to rain down on some rally goers. They were making it rain, but the heat was too much for some attendees, many of whom had been waiting for hours. Tampa Fire Rescue said one of the attendees fainted and another had a seizure. The other 10 who were taken to the hospital were just listed as quote unquote sick with no other details. Now, this incident came 2 days after 30 rally goers in Omaha, Nebraska needed medical attention after transportation issues resulted in hundreds of attendees being stuck for hours in the freezing cold. Officials said 7 were taken to area hospitals with a variety of ailments. The temperature in the area in Nebraska was in the mid 30s at the time, but as low as 27 degrees with the wind chill. Okay, read this article from NBCnews.com. The people that go to the hospital, we pray for them. We hope nothing happens to them, but hopefully they have Obamacare. 2828. I mean, at the time, dumbass go up in there. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Well, I do know what to tell you. We're coming up on a break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Let me connect back to the radio station. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. You can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Stand by. We'll be back from break in a couple of minutes here. Yes, Michael calling back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Shakita.
So when it comes to taxes.
All right, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast. Okay, we got Nick, we got Deborah, Lisa, Ann, Sherwin. Stand by, everybody. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. If you want to advertise with the African History Network. Now, I was asking Shakita at the radio station if she could hear me. What's up, Lord of All? How you doing, man? Hotep, brother. Okay, we got Sharon. We got Virginia. All right, stand by. We'll back and break in just a minute here. All right. We're re-airing these shows on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep also. So I've been going through editing these shows and re-airing them. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. Hey, it is Thursday, October 29th, 2020. We are live. You know, we're here now Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and then we're still on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay, so that helps support us, helps us keep doing the research, especially being that we're on 6 days a week instead of one. Look out for me on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Friday, October 30th, 2020 edition. And we share that broadcast here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network as well. It airs usually 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, 313-778-7600 is the calling number. If you have a question or comment. Right before the break, we were given an update of what's going on the campaign trail. Now, over 80 million people have early voted. The number I'm hearing is actually about 87 million people have early voted. It could very well hit 100 million by November 3rd. Okay. Now, in the 2016 election, there were 137 million people who voted. So we could hit 100 million by November 3rd. This is crazy. So we see Trump and Joe Biden in Florida today. Now, the NBC News Marist poll shows that Joe Biden has a 4-point lead over Donald Trump, but that is within the margin of error. So it could go 4 points in favor. It can go 4 points higher in favor of Biden, or it can go 4 points higher in favor of Trump. All right. A separate poll released this afternoon from Monmouth University shows Biden ahead in Florida by 5 points among registered voters. Now, in a stark reminder of the issue that has become central to the campaign, Florida reported another 4,100 new cases of COVID-19 today, as the U.S. reported 89,000 new cases, which set a record. Now, the latest NBC News national polling average, which is the average of the leading polls, currently has Joe Biden leading Donald Trump by more than 8 points. So Biden has been pretty steady in his lead over Trump nationally. If we look at COVID-19, it's getting worse. And what's really going to really be bad is when people are getting the flu and COVID-19, because it's getting colder outside. People are retreating indoors. This is going to allow COVID-19 to spread and the flu to spread. The coronavirus surge is hitting new heights in the Midwest. At least 5 states in the region shattered their single-day records for new cases. On Thursday, October 29th, Illinois had 6,363 new cases. Indiana, 3,649. Iowa, 2,469. Minnesota, 2,872. And Ohio with 3,590. We look at nationwide, total hospitalizations have risen about 45,000, a level that has not been seen since mid-August. Now, if we look at 2 things, NBC News, we posted an article from NBCnews.com earlier today on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. U.S. hits 9 million COVID-19 cases. U.S. hits 9 million COVID-19 cases. We're going to come back to that in just a minute, give you some of the highlights. If we look at the live updates from the Washington Post, U.S. tops 89,000 coronavirus cases in a single day for the first time ever. The United States surpassed its record for single day reported infections of coronavirus on Thursday, October 29th, counting at least 89,940 cases, at least 89,940 cases. Let's try to pull this up here. Okay. All right. So, and pushing the total number of infections toward 9 million. The country also tallied more than 1,000 deaths related to the virus for the second consecutive day. More than 1,000 COVID-19 related deaths for the second consecutive day. At least 228,000 fatalities have been linked to the virus since February. Let's see here. Let's look at the updates. We see the we see the U.S. economy grew a record 7.4% in the third quarter, a sharp reversal from its historic second quarter plunge. Another 751,000 people applied for jobless claims last week, down about 40,000 from the week before. We posted an article about the unemployment numbers and the GDP. We'll talk more about that on Friday's show. All right. Okay, very quickly here, I want to look at the updates from NBC News dealing with coronavirus, because there was a deep article that we're going to talk about on tomorrow night's show. They have an extensive article. The economy is showing signs of recovery. Many Black Americans are not. The economy is showing signs of recovery. Many Black Americans are not. COVID-19 exacerbated long-standing racial inequalities in the job market that experts say will take dramatic policy overhauls to overfix. Once again, this is dealing with policies, politics, laws. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement to address these issues, these racial disparities, the systemic inequalities that COVID-19 has exposed, is going to have to be addressed by policy. Okay. It's not economic empowerment that's going to get us out of this. It's going to be policy, because it was bad policy that put us in the predicament. It's going to have to be better or good policy that gets us out of the predicament. I'm all for economic empowerment, but that ain't what put us in this. Okay. So we'll talk about that some more on Friday's show. But if we look at some of these highlights from this article from NBC News, U.S. hits 9 million COVID-19 cases. COVID-19 infections have been spreading across the U.S. at the fastest rate since the crisis began. The fastest rate since the crisis began, even before the country hit the dismal benchmark of 9 million coronavirus infections. So it's not new cases because they're doing more testing. Is new cases because the infection is spreading, and we can also see the increase in hospitalizations that the infection is spreading again. Now, as we talked about earlier in the week, little Jared Kushner said that African Americans have been hit especially hard economically by the crisis, and little Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and advisor, added insult to injury by falsely claiming that African Americans were still struggling on Trump's watch because they simply do not work hard enough. Okay, no, that's not what. Now, look, first of all, Donald Trump plays golf more than like professional golfers. He's played golf more than any president in recent times. He's probably the laziest president we've had, and Jared Kushner wants to say African Americans, or imply African Americans don't work hard enough. And he's the poster boy for white privilege. Now, the Trump administration, which critics say was slow to respond to the pandemic, has gotten, quote, woefully behind, end quote, in stockpiling medical gloves as coronavirus cases have been surging again, experts told NBC News. Let's see here. Okay, check out the rest of this. We'll post this link here. You can check out the rest of those updates. All right. I want to go to this story here dealing with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund sues the Trump administration. Okay. NAACP Legal Defense Fund sues the Trump administration. The Hill.com reported this. We posted an article about this earlier today. And it's the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and other civil rights groups. This deals with the diversity training that Donald Trump suspended. Okay. This is from October 29th, 2020. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund, along with a pair of other national civil rights organizations, has sued President Trump over his executive order at the end of September 2020, which banned federal agencies, contractors, and grant recipients from conducting diversity training, which he has deemed, quote unquote, anti-American. He has deemed it anti-American. Now, keep in mind, he's the first Russian president of the United States. Keep in mind, this is Benedict Donald. Okay, but he deems the diversity training anti-American after he said what all he was going to do for African Americans, and he asked African Americans in 2016, what the hell do you have to lose? And I told you the correct answer was everything. Now, the complaint filed with the federal court in Washington, D.C. was brought forth Thursday, October 29th, by the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, the National Urban League, and the National Fair Housing Alliance. In the filings, the groups argue that Trump's order violates freedom of speech while inhibiting progress in the fight against systemic racism and gender discrimination in the workplace. In the filings, the groups argue that Trump's order violates freedom of speech while inhibiting progress in the fight against systemic racism and gender discrimination in the workplace. Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump doesn't even want to admit systemic racism exists. He doesn't want to admit it exists in policing. He doesn't really want to admit it exists, period. So him banning the diversity training falls in line with him being really in denial that systemic racism exists. And then his attorney general, well, his second attorney general, William Barr, doesn't want to admit that systemic racism exists in policing. Okay, so this all falls in line. So you're in denial, okay, and then you attack those, then you attack the training to address the issue, but you don't want to admit that the issue exists. So why do you need the training? Okay, so this all falls in line. Once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences. All right. Once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences. And there was an article from there was one from the Washington Post that dealt with the diversity training. We're going to try to pull that one up. It was one that I printed up. It was from September, and this dealt with Trump's little executive order here. Let's see here. And Washington Post has also an article. Trump's crackdown on training about white privilege draws broad opposition. Trump's crackdown on training about white privilege draws broad opposition. Business, nonprofit, and civil rights groups have all denounced his executive order. This one here is from October 29th, 2020, also from the Washington Post. But I'm going to pull up the original. Yeah, the original article I was looking for is this one it? Okay, it's another one from the Washington Post I was looking for. I think this one was it. White House directs federal agencies to cancel race-related training sessions it calls un-American propaganda. Yeah, this is the one I was looking for. So this is from the Washington Post. This is from September 5th, 2020. White House directs federal agencies to cancel race-related training sessions it calls un-American propaganda. And those watching on Facebook and YouTube, follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. We're going to turn on the screen share so you can see this here. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have any questions or comments, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have any questions or comments, we have any callers, Shakita? Let me know. And we'll post this here, 313-778-7600. All right, let's look at this. Let's turn this on. All right, there we go. All right, so I talked about this briefly in September. We talked about this a little bit in September. White House directs federal agencies to cancel race-related training sessions it calls un-American propaganda. Administration seeks list of contracts for those that refer to quote-unquote white privilege, according to memo. All right. Now, Donald Trump is moving to revamp federal agencies' racial sensitivity trainings, casting some of them as quote unquote divisive and un American, according to a memo by the White House Office of Management and Budget. In the 2-page memo, OMB Director Russell Vought, Vought, says Trump has asked him to prevent federal agencies from spending millions of dollars in millions of taxpayer dollars. Okay, now why is Trump concerned about taxpayer dollars when he don't pay his taxes in general? Maybe if he showed us his taxes, then we would know how much he pays. But we know 2016, 2017, he paid $750. So why is he so concerned about taxpayer dollars? Is he concerned about taxpayer dollars when he's going back and forth to Mar-a-Lago or going back and forth to his golf courses and resorts and charging charging Secret Service, okay, money for charging Secret Service for rooms and charging them to rent golf carts and things like that to follow him around? Is he worried about taxpayer dollars then? Just curious. So in a 2-page memo, OMB Director Russell Vought says Trump has asked him to prevent federal agencies from spending millions in taxpayer dollars on these training sessions. Vought says OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, will instruct federal agencies to come up with a list of all contracts related to training sessions involving quote unquote white privilege or critical race theory, and do everything possible within the law to cancel those contracts. The memo states. The memo released on Friday, and this was early September 2020, also tells all federal agencies to identify and, if possible, cancel contracts that involve teaching that America is an, quote, inherently racist or evil country, end quote. An inherently racist or evil country. Trump doesn't even want to deal with racism. Quote, the president has directed me to ensure that federal agencies cease and desist from using taxpayer dollars to fund these divisive, un-American propaganda training sessions, end quote, the memo states. Parts of the memo were carefully worded, but Trump went several steps further in describing his actions in a series of Twitter posts on Saturday morning. So this is Saturday, 2020. We're not going to get into his ignorant ass Twitter posts. Okay. Hopefully once he leaves the White House, Twitter will shut his account down. Okay. Now, if we go to the one from if we go back to the one from thehill.com, NAACP Legal Defense Fund, other civil rights groups sue over Trump order banning diversity training. If we look at this, and then let's turn the screen share on also here. Just a second here. That's for the Hill. All right. So you can see this one as well. Okay, let's look at this one. So the order strikes at the heart of those. Well, in the filings, the groups argue that Trump's order violates freedom of speech while inhibiting progress in the fight against systemic racism and gender discrimination in the workplace. The order strikes at the heart of those critical efforts by government and non-government actors, including trainings and other forms of private speech in the workplace to eradicate race and sex stereotyping and other continuing manifestations of entrenched discrimination and bias against people of color, women, and LGBTQ individuals, the lawsuit reads. Now, Trump in his order said that the affected entities, quote, should, of course, continue to foster environments devoid of hostility, grounded in race, sex, and other federal protected characteristics, end quote. But that many of the trainings being conducted are, quote, rooted in the pernicious and false belief that America is an irredeemably racist and sexist country, end quote. Well, America can take a big step forward towards redeeming itself by voting your ass out of office. I'm just saying. Quote, rooted in the but many of the trainings being conducted are, quote, rooted in the pernicious and false belief that America is an irredeemably racist and sexist country. But he's racist and sexist. Trump. Okay. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Now, Trump is referring to critical race theory, which states that racism has always been and continues to be inherently imbued within the institutions of America. Trump has previously denied the existence of systemic racism in the country. Now, Janae Nelson, Associate Director Counsel for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, said that Trump's directive erases the lived experiences of people and communities. Trump's directive erases the lived experiences of people and communities. This administration has gone even further this time by attempting to completely rewrite centuries of the country's history and dishonoring the memories of those who have been involved in the ongoing struggle for racial and gender equality and the perfection of our democracy, end quote. Janae Nelson said in a statement, it operates as an effective ban on truth and an assault on equality in the workplace, end quote. Now, other critics of Trump have pointed to his executive order as yet another example of Trump's often incendiary rhetoric regarding race relations in the U.S. The White House did not immediately respond to the Hill's request for comment. Okay, I'm sure they didn't. So check out this article here from thehill.com. NAACP Legal Defense Fund, other civil rights groups sue over Trump order banning diversity training. What the hell do you have to lose? Okay. This you follow his actions, and they didn't well, I knew he was lying in the first place, but still, you follow his actions, and sometimes it seems like Trump is bipolar, then check out this article here from Washington Post. Trump's crackdown on training about white privilege draws broad opposition. This is from October 29th, 2020. Trump's crackdown on training about white privilege draws broad opposition. Check this one out also. We'll post this link here. This is from the Washington Post. All right. Let's switch gears here. So I want to go to give a quick update with the Walter Wallace Jr. in Philadelphia. We talked about that earlier in the week. Talked about that case, the police killing earlier in the week. There was a good article from NBC News about this, and then also one from Washington Post. One from Washington Post is from October 29th, 2020. Walter Williams Jr.'s family calls for justice but does not demand murder charges in shooting of Philadelphia police. In shooting by Philadelphia police. A lawyer for Walter Wallace Jr.'s family said Thursday that Wallace was clearly suffering mental distress when Philadelphia police officers fatally shot him this week. But he said Wallace's relatives are not demanding murder charges in the case, saying the police officers lacked the training to handle the encounter. Now, Shaka Johnson, Shaka, Shaka Johnson, the family's attorney, said that earlier Thursday he had watched body camera footage from the shooting. Police arrived at the scene this past Monday, after Wallace's family members called for help multiple times amid what Johnson described as chaos and medical concerns in the home. All right. And from an earlier report today, they said that when they made the call, they were actually calling for an ambulance, but the police showed up. They were actually calling for an ambulance. Okay. So, quote, there was a person in obvious mental health crisis, Attorney Shaka Johnson said, adding that Wallace's family had, quote, asked for the whole buffet of services from 911, including police officers, but said those who showed up were not prepared for what they found. Okay. But they were calling for an ambulance to get help for him, to get help for Walter Wallace Jr. Police officers arriving on the scene shot and killed Wallace, a 27-year-old African-American man, setting off successive nights of protests, looting, and property damage. His death is the latest chapter in the often painful history between the city's police department and many of his residents. Now, police say the officers who encountered Wallace were responding to a call about a man with a knife. The Philadelphia Police Union's president said Wallace was, quote unquote, aggressively approaching the officers. Wallace's family has said he was in the midst of a mental crisis and wondered why responding officers did not use a taser to subdue him. Wondered why the responding officers did not use a taser to subdue him. Now, the police department later said neither officer was equipped with tasers. All right. Quote, I understand he had a knife. That does not give you carte blanche to execute a man, end quote, Attorney Shaka Johnson said. Now, Wallace is one of at least 806 people whom have been fatally shot in 2020 by police, according to the Washington Post database. Their database is called Fatal Force by the Washington Post. It's probably the most extensive database of police killings. Okay, so I do research there at Fatal Force, and they break it down by race of the person killed. They break it down by race. They break it down by whether the person was armed or unarmed, what type of weapon they had, whether there was body camera footage, dash cam footage, etc. It's called Fatal Force. It's probably the most extensive database dealing with police killings. The Guardian, the Guardian.co.uk, if they have it updated, they have one called The Counted. The Counted deals with police killings, those who were killed in police custody. Okay, so that would include like a Sandra Bland, who was in police custody, in the custody of a sheriff. She was jailed. Whereas the one from the Washington Post, that basically deals with police shootings. Okay, but check that out, called Fatal Force. All right, how much time we have left in the show, Shakita? Let me know. Okay, so Wallace is one of at least 806 people whom police have fatally shot in 2020, according to the Washington Post. Mental health issues are a consistent factor in many of the shootings. Mental health issues are a consistent factor in many of the shootings, with about 1 in 5 of those fatally shot by police known to have been dealing with such concerns or experiencing crises at the time of the encounters. Okay. Now, speaking briefly, on Thursday, Walter Wallace Jr.'s parents both called for justice in the case. Johnson said the family did not think, Attorney Shaka Johnson said the family did not think the officers should be charged with murder because, quote, they were improperly trained and did not have the proper equipment, end quote. He declined to say whether either officer should face any criminal charges, leaving that decision to the office of District Attorney Larry Krasner, who has pledged to consider the case fully. Police declined to comment on Attorney Shaka Johnson's remarks, citing the ongoing investigation. City officials said Thursday night they expected to release the body camera footage and 911 recordings by the end of next week. Okay. Now, after the protests gave way to looting and unrest on Monday and Tuesday nights, the city imposed a curfew on Wednesday, which was considerably calmer. The city said Thursday there had been more than 200 arrests and more than 50 officers injured since the unrest began this week. Officials encouraged people to stay home Thursday night, but did not impose another curfew. Check out the rest of this article from Washington Post. Walter Wallace Jr.'s family calls for justice, but does not demand murder charges in shooting by Philadelphia police. From October 29th, 2020 by Mara Ewing. Okay, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. We have to get out of here. Now, those watching on our social media platforms, we're going to continue for a little while longer on our social media platforms. The African History Network on Facebook, Michael M. Hotep on YouTube. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Michael Basden, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. Let me disconnect this call here. Stand by. All right, let's continue. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. We'll get to these other stories, and then we'll be out of here because I have to do 2 shows on Friday. I have to do Roland Martin's show Friday, and I have to do Roland's show at 6 and do my show at 11. So we're gonna get through the rest of this, and let's see. Saturday, October 31st, 10 a.m. to 11:30. 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Estate Planning and Your Wealth. This is a live webinar with expert broker Yolanda Spivey and attorney Nicole Compton. This is a live webinar. You can sign up for this at estateplanning.school, estateplanning.school. And this is, you sign up through Eventbrite, okay? And they're going to deal with It's Your Money. We show you how to keep it in the family. It's Your Money. We show you how to keep it in the family. Insurance and estate planning made simple. Presented by Yolanda Spivey and Nicole Compton. Let's turn on the screen share. We should be able to show you this quickly here. How's everybody doing? Okay, here we go. All right. No one wants to think about estate planning, but it is a must for creating wealth. Estate planning saves you money. We make it simple. Okay. Don't let doing your estate planning scare you. This Halloween, October 31st, 2020, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, get some Black Girl Magic from your go-to insurance guru, Yolanda Spivey of Michael Whitney and Associates, and your sister girl and law attorney Nicole Compton of Biz Law Life and Nicole Compton LLC. We will show you the tricks to make it easy to complete your estate planning and save you money while building a legacy and preserving your wealth. You will leave with a free basket of treats valued at $299 if purchased. Okay, so okay, so check this out. Um, here's Yolanda and Nicole. All right, check this out. Estate, what is this? It's estate planning.school, estate planning.school on Eventbrite, and we'll post a link here. It's only $29.99 to register. Okay, and this is a live webinar, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, October 31st. Okay, so check that out. Register for that today. Okay, let's continue with this. All right, so we talked about Walter Wallace Jr. and we talked about COVID-19. Let's see, we have Sandra, Harry, Sheldon, Erica. There's a few of the people watching. All right, so let's deal with this date in African American history. Some of these other topics we'll get to tomorrow. I don't want to do any more 3-hour shows. It's too damn long. This show's an hour, so I don't want to. I don't want to do 3 hours. Sunday night show is 2 hours. I have to pace myself. If you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. African American business owners. Post the name of your business here in the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. And you can advertise. Our Sunday night show is sold out, but you can advertise with our daily show, Monday through Friday. Okay, and we create a video commercial for you, and we air it. We air your video commercial when we do the rebroadcast of these shows, and your audio commercial will play on the audio podcast of our shows. We're on 9 different podcast platforms. Okay. All right. So I posted this on our fan page earlier today. This is from EJI.gov. We try to post something done with this date in African American history each day if I have time to. This deals with October 29th, 1869. Okay. Now, this is during Reconstruction. Once again, we talked about early in the week, we talked about the Ocoee Massacre of November 2nd, 1920, which was on Election Day. Okay. It was on Election Day in Ocoee, Florida, and you had about 50 African Americans who were killed. Okay. And this involved them trying to vote, etc. This one here, this is in 1869. And let me see, I pulled it up here. White mob kidnaps and whips black legislator. White mob kidnaps and whips black Georgia legislator. White mob kidnaps and whips black Georgia legislator. His name was Abram Colby. Abram Colby. And this took place 4 years after the Civil War ends. It ends in 1865. And I was looking at another article earlier today dealing with this also. This one here is from EJI.org, Equal Justice Initiative. So let's look at what happened here. So on October 29th, 1869, a white mob attacked and brutally whipped a 52-year-old African-American man named Abram Colby because of his political advocacy. Abram Colby was born into slavery in Greene County, Georgia, in approximately 1817. Okay, now when you study the history of slavery, you're going to see that some people they didn't know exactly when they were born because slaves didn't have birth certificates. All right, one of them was Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass did not know exactly the year he was born or the date. So he took the assumed birth date of February 14th, but he didn't know exactly the year or date he was born. So Abram Colby was born into slavery in Greene County, Georgia, in approximately 1817. Now, he was the son of an enslaved African-American woman and a white landowner whose name was Mr. Colby. a white landowner. Now, I'm sorry. Now, Mr. Colby was emancipated 15 years before the end of American slavery and would tirelessly worked tirelessly to organize newly freed African Americans following the Civil War. A radical Republican who a radical Republican who stood for racial equality, Abram Colby was elected to serve in the Georgia House of Representatives during Reconstruction. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. His impassioned advocacy for African American civil rights earned him the attention of the local Ku Klux Klan, a terrorist organization founded December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee, to resist Reconstruction and restore white supremacy through targeted violence against African Americans and their white political allies. Because the Klan wasn't just attacking African Americans, the Klan was also attacking white Republicans. And the Klan was also killing and lynching white Republicans as well. It wasn't just African. The majority of the people who the Klan was lynching were African Americans, but they weren't the only ones. Now, they weren't the only terrorist organization. Also, you have like the Black Legion and the red shirts, and you have these other white domestic terrorist organizations, or some of them didn't have names. It's just white men just terrorizing African Americans. Some of them didn't have names. Now, 3 years after being attacked by a mob of white Klansmen, when called to Washington, D.C. to testify about the assault before a congressional committee investigating reports of racial violence in the South, Abram Colby bravely identified his attackers as some of the, quote, first-class men in our town. Some of the first-class men in our town. One is a lawyer, one a doctor, and some are farmers. He said, shortly before the attack, Abram Colby explained the men had tried to bribe him to change parties, political parties, or give up his office. Now, Abram Colby refused to do either, and days later they returned. On October 29th, 1869, the white mob broke my door open, took me out of bed, took me to the woods, and whipped me for 3 hours or more and left me for dead. They said to me, do you think you will ever vote another damn radical ticket? I said, if there was an election tomorrow, I would vote the radical ticket. They set in and whipped me 1,000 licks more with sticks and straps that had buckles on the ends of them, he said. Now, Abram Colby told the committee that the attack had, quote, broken something inside of him, and that the Klan's continued harassment and violent assaults had forced him to abandon his re-election campaign, because he was an elected official in the Georgia state legislature. Abram Colby testified mostly emotionally about the attack's impact on his daughter, who was home when the white mob seized him to be whipped. Quote, my little daughter begged them not to carry me away. They drew up a gun and actually frightened her to death. She never got over it until she died. That was the part that grieves me the most. Okay, so check this out from EJI.org, and they have daily dealing with this date in history. We post some of those here on our fan page, the African History Network. And then there was, you can Google Abram Colby, Georgia. There was a PBS.org. They have some information under the American experience. They have some information on Abram Colby also, dealing with Southern violence. Abram Colby, a former slave and member of the Georgia legislature, was called to Washington in 1872 to testify before a joint House and Senate committee investigating reports of Southern violence. So this was all during Reconstruction. Okay, so, and then let's see here. There's one other one. I was looking at some of these earlier today. Let's see here. Probably in before the Mayflower, they probably talk about Abram Colby. Also, the history of the king. I'm just looking at some other entries here. All right. Okay, so take a look at this. Now, if we look at history.com, I get the emails each morning from history.com, official website of the History Channel, that deals with this date in history. For this date in history, we have October 29th, 1929. October 29th, 1929. The stock market crashes on Black Tuesday. The stock market crashes on Black Tuesday. Black Tuesday hits Wall Street as investors trade 16,410,030 shares on the New York Stock Exchange in a single day. Billions of dollars were lost, wiping out thousands of investors, and stock tickers ran hours behind because the machinery could not handle the tremendous volume of trading. In the aftermath of Black Tuesday, America and the rest of the industrialized world spiraled downward into the Great Depression. Now, during the 1920s, the U.S. stock market underwent a rapid expansion, reaching its peak in August of 1929. And let me pull this up here. Reaching its peak in August of 1929, a period of wild speculation. Okay, let's try to pull this up here. Okay.
Mary Kelly worked.
This is trying to play. It's trying to play a clip for. Off. All right. Let's pull this up here. Okay, so during the 1920s, the U.S. stock market underwent rapid expansion, reaching its peak in August 1929, a period of wild speculation. By then, production had already declined and unemployment had risen, leaving stocks in great excess of their real value, Among the other causes of the eventual market collapse were low wages, the proliferation of debt, a weak agriculture, and an excess of large bank loans that could not be liquidated. Now, stock prices began to decline in September of 1929 and early October. And on October 18th, the fall began. Panic set in. And on October 24th, 1929, known as Black Thursday, a record 12,894,650 shares were traded. Investment companies and leading bankers attempted to stabilize the market by buying up great blocks of stock, producing a moderate rally on Friday. On Monday, however, the storm broke anew, and the market went into free fall. Black Monday was followed by Black Tuesday, in which stock prices collapsed completely. After October 29th, 1929, stock prices had nowhere to go but up. So there was considerable recovery during succeeding weeks. Overall, however, prices continued to drop as the United States slumped into the Great Depression. And by 1932, stocks were worth only about 20% of their value in the summer of 1929. The stock market crash in 1929 was not the sole cause of the Great Depression, but it did act to accelerate the global economic collapse, of which it was also a symptom. By 1933, nearly half of America's banks had failed, and unemployment was approaching 15 million people, or 30% of the workforce. It would take World War II, which the U.S. gets involved in December 1941. So you're looking at 1941, 1945. It would take World War II and the massive level of armaments production taken on by the United States to finally bring the country out of the Depression after a decade of suffering. So check out this article here from history.com, official website of the History Channel. Stock market crashes on Black Tuesday. Stock market crashes on Black Tuesday. If we look very quickly here at the Great Depression, also they have a number of articles and videos dealing with the Great Depression. Let's see here. If we look at the Great Depression history and then during the Great Depression. So Herbert Hoover is the president in 1929. Okay. Herbert Hoover was a Republican. He became president in that 1928 presidential race. He becomes president. He wins the race. He runs against Al Smith, who was a moderate, and Al Smith was from New York. Okay, they're going to employ a Southern strategy. They're going to employ a Southern strategy called the Lily White movement, which launches the Lily White movement in 1928, and is going to be the Lily White movement that is designed to push African Americans out of the Republican Party. Okay, and what they're going to do is they're going to the Republicans are going to appeal to Southern segregationist Democrats in 5 former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover. Okay. And the Republicans are ignoring the needs and concerns of African Americans. They're ignoring the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, different things like this. So African Americans are going to slowly start going over to the Democratic Party because they found the Democratic Party in general to be more receptive to our needs, even though they were still leery of the party. They were leery of President Roosevelt. Now, African Americans like Eleanor Roosevelt, his wife, more so, but they found the Democratic Party to be more receptive to our needs, as the Republican Party is ever more increasingly starting to ignore us. So many people think the party realignment that is completed in the mid to late 1960s, people think that African Americans switched to the Democratic Party because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's not true. By 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had switched over to the Democratic Party. Okay, you got to go back to the 1920s to see what happened. It didn't start in 64 and 65. You got to go back basically 4 decades before that. All right, now, when we look at the Great Depression, and let's see here. They have a clip here. Let's look at this.
Lured by fast riches, many Americans went wild in the 1920s, investing beyond their means, often with money they didn't have.
People seriously believe in 1920s that the stock market and everything else would continue to go up and up and up forever.
And they weren't the only ones. Even banks speculated using depositor funds.
Many banks had been speculating in the stock market, that is, betting the share prices would go up. And when stock prices crashed in the autumn of 1920, hundreds of banks lost a lot of money. Their depositors learned about the bank losses, and they naturally feared for their own deposits.
Lack of confidence turned to panic. By 1931, people flocked to the banks to take their money out.
In normal circumstances, this is fine, because as many people as want their money out are balanced by those people who put their money in. But in times of panic, when people begin to think that the banks are not sound, they all want their money out at once, and the banks simply don't have the money to give it out. That's what's called a bank run, and it often leads to the collapse of the bank.
In 1931 alone, more than 2,000 banks closed. By 1933, 4,000 banks closed. The financial crisis left thousands destitute, hopeless, often in despair.
People who've saved up their whole lives preparing for retirement might discover on the eve of retirement that they have no money left at all. The bank failures wiped out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individuals.
In 1933, newly elected President Roosevelt took steps to renew confidence in America's banking system. He declared a bank holiday so the federal government could assess the banks and determine which were worth saving through federal assistance. Roosevelt also initiated legislation for depositors' insurance, and in 1933, the Federal Insurance Deposit Corporation, or FDIC, was created.
What this meant was that depositors knew that if their banks failed, they would still get their money out. And needless to say, this encouraged people simply to leave their money in the bank.
Roosevelt's actions restored America's confidence, and by mid-1933, the bank runs were over.
All right, so that's a little background information on the Great Depression. Now, throughout the 1920s, the U.S. economy expanded rapidly, and the nation's total wealth more than doubled between 1920 and 1929, a period dubbed as the Roaring Twenties. The stock market centered at the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street in New York City was the scene of reckless speculation, where everyone from millionaire tycoons to cooks and janitors poured their savings into stocks. As a result, the stock market underwent rapid expansion, reaching its peak in August of 1929. By then, production had already declined and unemployment had risen, leaving stock prices. Hold on just a second. Leaving stock prices. Hold on, let's try to play another clip here. Okay, just a second. All right, so in stock market, hold on, it keeps playing on these goddamn political ads. All right, so by then production had already declined and unemployment had risen, leaving stock prices much higher than their actual value. Additionally, wages at that time were low. Consumer debt was proliferating. The agricultural sector of the economy was struggling due to drought and failing food prices, and banks had an excess of large loans that could not be liquidated. The American economy entered a mild recession during the summer of 1929 as consumer spending slowed and unsold goods began to pile up, which in turn slowed factory production. Nonetheless, stock prices continued to rise, and by the fall of that year had reached stratospheric levels that could not be justified by expected future earnings. Okay, so let's see, bank runs, Roosevelt elected. Yeah, so Roosevelt is going to win that the 1932 election. Herbert Hoover only serves one term, okay? Because Herbert Hoover mishandles the Great Depression. So he only serves one term, and he's defeated by he's defeated by Roosevelt. Okay, so when we look at Roosevelt elected, let's see, we'll play this clip here. Roosevelt elected. Hold on, let me stop some of these clips from playing. Just a second here. They get. All right, let's look at this one here. Roosevelt elected. Let's play this one here. So Herbert Hoover is only going to serve one term. He mishandles the Great Depression, and that sets it up for Roosevelt in the 1932 presidential election to win. Herbert Hoover, a Republican who had formerly served as U.S. Secretary of Commerce, believed that government should not directly intervene in the economy, in that it did not have the responsibility to create jobs or provide economic relief for its citizens. In 1932, however, with the country mired in the depths of the Great Depression and some 15 million people, more than 20% of the U.S. population at the time, unemployed, Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt won an overwhelming victory in the presidential election. So just as Donald Trump mishandled the coronavirus, which then tanked the economy, okay, and he lost, and I think he's going to lose. Herbert Hoover mishandled the Great Depression and mishandled the economy, and then this sets it up for Roosevelt to win. In 1932, however, the country mired in the depths of the Great Depression and some 15 million, more than 20% of the U.S. population at the time unemployed. Democrat Franklin Roosevelt won an overwhelming victory in the presidential election. By Inauguration Day, March 4th, 1933, every U.S. state had ordered all remaining banks to close at the end of the fourth wave of the banking panics, and the U.S. Treasury did not have enough cash to pay all government workers. Nonetheless, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR as he was known, projected a calm energy and optimism, famously declaring, quote, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Now, Roosevelt took immediate action to address the country's economic woes, first announcing a 4-day bank holiday during which all banks would close so that Congress could pass reform legislation and reopen those banks determined to be sound. He also began addressing the public directly over the radio in a series of talks, and these so-called fireside chats went a long way towards restoring public confidence. During President Roosevelt's first 100 days in office, his administration passed legislation that aimed to stabilize industrial and agricultural production, create jobs, and stimulate recovery. So this is government impacting business, impacting the economy. Laws, regulations, policies, they shape the economy. Okay. In addition, Roosevelt sought to reform the financial system, creating the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, to protect depositors' accounts, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, that exists today, the Securities and Exchange Commission. All this comes from President Roosevelt. When we look at the Minimum Wage Act, 1935, Roosevelt. The Social Security Administration, 1935, Roosevelt. GI Bill, 1944, Roosevelt. All this was part of the New Deal. So we see the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, comes from President Roosevelt to protect depositors' accounts, and the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, to regulate the stock market and prevent abuses of the kind that led to the 1929 crash. That comes from President Roosevelt as well. Okay, so then we deal with the New Deal, a road to recovery. Among the programs and institutions of the New Deal that aided in recovery from the Great Depression, once again, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, the adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. So here we have policy. We have the legislative branch of government dealing with policy to impact the economy, to lift people up out of poverty. Among the programs and institutions of the New Deal that aided in recovery from the Great Depression were the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, which built dams and hydroelectric projects to control flooding and provide electric power to the impoverished Tennessee Valley region, and the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, which was a permanent jobs program that employed 8.5 million people from 1935 to 1943. This is politics. This is laws that impacts the economy, creating jobs. This is the Tennessee Valley Authority. That sounds like infrastructure. That sounds like infrastructure, which comes from legislation, which comes from policy that creates jobs, to build dams, to build a hydroelectric project. Okay, this is politics impacting the economy. Now, when the Great Depression began, the United States was the only industrialized country in the world without some form of unemployment insurance or Social Security. In 1935, the U.S. Congress, the legislative branch of government, passed the Social Security Act, 1935, under President Roosevelt, which for the first time provided Americans with unemployment, disability, and pensions for old age. This is government impacting people's lives, government impacting the economy. After showing early signs of recovery beginning in the spring of 1933, the economy continued to improve throughout the next 3 years, during which real GDP, gross domestic product, adjusted for inflation, grew at an average rate of 9% per year. A sharp recession hit in 1937, caused in part by the Federal Reserve's decision to increase its requirements for money in reserve. Though the economy began improving again in 1938, the second severe contraction reversed many of the gains in production and employment and prolonged the effects of the Great Depression through the end of the decade. Depression-era hardships had fueled the rise of extremist political movements in various European countries, most notably that of Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime in Germany. German aggression led war to break out in Europe in 1939, and the WPA turned its attention to strengthening the military infrastructure of the United States, even as the country maintained its neutrality. When we look at African Americans in the Great Depression, because some of the policies benefited us, but some of those policies we were discriminated against when it came to, especially things like the GI Bill. All right, we've talked about that before. 1/5 of all Americans receiving federal relief during the Great Depression were African Americans. Most of them lived in the rural South, but farm and domestic work, two major sectors in which African Americans were employed, because that's historical, farm and domestic work, because after the Civil War ends, this is where you're going to have all these labor unions being created, like the National Labor Union, 1866, and you're going to have the American Federation of Labor around about 1875. And during slavery, there were 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865, 262 skills, trades, and crafts. And what's going to happen is that these labor unions are going to be created right after slavery ends to protect these jobs for white men and lock us out of these jobs we have been doing for 246 years, largely for free. Okay. And then they're trying to lock us back into agriculture. All right. So you're going to have the sharecropping system being popularized. And you're going to have in many of these southern states, like South Carolina, they're going to require labor contracts. They're going to require African Americans to have labor contracts with plantations because they're trying to lock us into sharecropping, lock us out of the skilled trades. Okay, because we dominated the trades, and many of us were better in the skilled trades than a lot of white people. So, and they're trying to lock us into back into agriculture, back into farming, because they need a labor force for farming. All right, now if we look at very quickly here. Well, I'll find it. Let's go back to this and we'll play this clip quickly here. African Americans in the Great Depression. 1/5 of all Americans receiving federal relief during the Great Depression were African American, most in the rural South, but farm and domestic work, two major sectors in which African Americans were employed, were not included in the 1935 Social Security Act. So the Social Security Act back at this time did not help a lot of us because a lot of the jobs we were in were not covered under the Social Security Act. Okay. Farming and domestic work. All right. So were not included in 1935 Social Security Act, meaning there was no safety net in times of uncertainty. Rather than fire domestic help, private employers could simply pay them less without legal repercussions. And those relief programs for which blacks were eligible on paper were rife with discrimination and practice, since all relief programs were administered locally. They were administered usually at the state level, okay, as opposed to the federal level. Despite these obstacles, President Roosevelt's black cabinet, quote unquote, black cabinet led by Mary McLeod Bethune, ensured nearly every New Deal agency had an African-American advisor. The number of African-Americans working in government tripled. The number of African-Americans working in government tripled. Okay, so check out the rest of this article here. This deals with the Great Depression. This is from history.com, history.com, official website of the History Channel. And is this the clip I wanted? Let's try to cue that clip up again that I was looking at. I think this was that the one I wanted, or is it the oh, I wanted this one here. Roosevelt elected. Okay, hold on. Let me pause these other things. Just a second here. This is the one I wanted. Roosevelt elected. Let's see if we can get this to play.
Within 5 days, the advance had begun. Congress called into emergency session, received the president's banking bill. In less than 8 hours, it had passed both houses. On March 12th, in the first of his radio fireside chats, the president gave the people a progress report.
My friends, I want to tell you what has been done in the last few days, why it was done, and what the next steps are going to be. The bank holiday, while resulting in many cases in great inconvenience, is affording us the opportunity to supply the currency necessary to meet the situation. Let me make it clear that the banks will take care of all needs. And it is my belief that hoarding during the past week has become an exceedingly unfashionable pastime. It needs no prophet to tell you that when the people find that they can get their money, that they can get it when they want it for all legitimate purposes, the phantom of fear will soon be laid. I can assure you that it is safer for you to keep your money in a reopened bank than to keep it under the mattress.
Okay, so that was that was dealing with Roosevelt elected, and he's dealing with the run on the banks. Okay, check out the book, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. And they have a section in here on labor unions, page 37. This is the third edition, page 37 on labor unions. And they deal with the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers. So they give some background information on how. Now, I'm not against labor unions. Let me say that. I'm not against labor unions that allow African Americans to move up in them and are fair. I'm not against that. I'm talking about historically how we were locked out of the unions. Labor unions, racial cleansing of American labor. The labor movement of the late 1800s has arguably done more to destroy Black progress than any other known action of white people, yet it is almost totally invisible in the written histories of Blacks in America. The union movement was specifically designed to, one, remove African Americans from their jobs in the skilled trades, which they dominated, and two, install in those jobs the European immigrants who were flooding into America by the millions. Okay. Now, once again, so this is not an anti-immigrant message. This is to understand history. And when these European immigrants, when they go into the factories and things like this, because this is before you have labor laws. Okay, this is before the 1894 Pullman strike. You have poor labor conditions. You don't have child labor laws, things like this. So these European immigrants, even though they're going to get some type of leg up, they're going to be exploited when they get these jobs also that we're locked out of. Okay, so it's exploitation going around. All right, so but the labor unions are largely doing two things: to lock out African Americans, protect these jobs for white people, and also protect them for European immigrants who are coming into the country as well. Scholars attribute the rapid success of immigrant groups directly to the advantages they received through their memberships in the American trade unions. White historians have misrepresented African Americans in slavery as being mere field hands, but African Americans held a virtual monopoly of almost all skilled and unskilled labor. Excuse me. They were the engineers, builders, tailors, shoemakers, carpenters, stonemasons, weavers, furniture and cabinet makers, plumbers, painters, sailors, boat makers, carriage makers, blacksmiths, printers, and every other type of skilled artisan. Okay. So check out pages 37 through 41 of How White People Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. And then in the book, I oftentimes talk about the book, The Other Slaves. When I do my online course dealing with ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And when I talk about this topic, I deal with the book The Other Slaves by Lewis, and I forgot the other writer. I think I have a printout. I think I have but in that book they list 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in the U.S. from 1619 to 1865. Where is that? I just saw that a couple of days ago. Where the hell did I just saw that. It was in one of these file folders I was looking in. But let's see if I can find it. What is that called? But anyway, check that out. Check out the book, The Other Slaves. And I found out about it at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. There is here it is here. Yeah, I figured it was this file folder. At the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit, there is a exhibit. When you go through and you look at, they have the main exhibit and Still We Rise. And then you go through a replica of a slave ship, and then you come out on the other side, and then they take you through the different phases after slavery. And you see Harriet Tubman, the statue of Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, things like this. But on the wall, there's this display on the wall. And it's called A Working Life African American Occupations. A Working Life African American Occupations. And it says those owned by skilled tradesmen learned their master's crafts. Those owned by skilled tradesmen learned their master's crafts. Directory of occupations held by Black artisans and craftsmen prior to 1865. The source was the book, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen, which came out in 1978 by authors James E. Newton and Ronald Lewis. Okay. So they list 262 skills, trades, and crafts that we had from 1619 to 1865. Now, there was a sign there that says you can't take pictures. Okay. So I spent an hour writing them down and I numbered them. That's how I know it's 262. Okay. This is a copy of what I wrote down. This is the first 147. All right. Because I spent an hour writing them down and then I numbered them because they weren't numbered. That's how I know it's 262. All right. So in some of my presentations, I have a slide, a PowerPoint slide where I have some of these, and they're listed in alphabetical order. When you see the display, they're listed in alphabetical order. But this is from the book, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen. So contrary to popular belief, because when certain people retell the history of slavery, they just want you to think that we just picked cotton or cooked the slave master's food, or we were just dealing with growing crops. No, we were doing all that. We were the skilled tradesmen. But see, the other part, this is why the whole way we look at the transatlantic slave trade, it has to be, we have to rethink the way this whole story is being taught, because the skills that we had in Africa, we brought here with us. We didn't just forget them. The skills we had in Africa, we brought here with us. We were skilled. We possessed skilled trades in Africa, and we're going to bring those here also. So some skills we're taught, but others we already had. All right. And we're going to use them here as well. So the name of the book is The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, Craftsmen, by Newton and Lewis, 1978. All right. So check that out. Okay. Hey, look, if you want to advertise with the African History Network, email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. And we can get you up and running basically today or in the next day or so. We can get you up and running, and we can create a video commercial for you. When we rebroadcast our shows, your commercial will run there. for our daily show, our Monday through Friday show. Our Sunday night show is totally sold out. I do not have any more space available in the Sunday night show. And then also your commercial will air on the podcast of our shows as well. It'll air in the podcast also. Okay. All right. And then you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. All right. Now, a lot of people want to learn about investing, and the Profit Room can help you with this. Are you interested in how all of Wall Street works? TheProfitRoom.com is a stock market trading and education company, a stock market trading and education company that has mentorship programs that are designed for beginners. They teach individuals how to create generational wealth through trading and investing in the financial markets. You may have seen the article blacknews.com had about them as well. We've posted that article a number of times. But they teach about stocks, options, futures, foreign exchange market, the Forex market. Their specialty is day trading and providing one-on-one mentorship. Visit their website, theprofitroom.com, PROFIT, theprofitroom.com for more information. Let them know you found out about this from the African History Network. Then also for those that have a sweet tooth, the pinkbakery.com is known for their famous No Frowny Brownie. Their famous No Frowny Brownie. Have you tasted the world famous No Frowny Brownie yet? If not, what are you waiting for? They are vegan, gluten-free, and free of the big 8 allergens. Visit thepinkbakery.com, thepinkbakery.com, and they are the first Black-owned big 8 allergen-free baking mix company. Visit thepinkbakery.com today and order your No Frowny Brownie mix. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History, you can donate to the African History Network also. $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, then through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. So this really helps us being that we're here I'm here 6 nights a week instead of 1 night a week. Okay, so that helps us to keep doing the research, keep broadcasting, stay on the air. So we'll be back Friday, and then let's do our Sunday night show, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.